Today, let's get started. Today is all about improving your effectiveness of your sales team. The outcomes that your sales team is having every day, every week, every month. How do we do that? And we're going to focus today on sales skills training. Talk about symptoms to look for that your team might need to improve your sales skills. We're going to talk about training. We're going to talk about training designs that I've seen that delivered the greatest results for sales teams. We might give you some ideas on what not to do. We're also going to share research that buyers are telling us that they want salespeople to do and they want salespeople to stop doing. All of that in the spirit of helping you have more profitable sales, higher sales results, growing sales. Some of you reached out, said you're trying to diversify and add new customers. It all starts with having the skills to execute. So, with that said, we're going to start the webinar. My goal, by the way, is that this is going to be interactive. So, there's going to be times where I'm going to ask people to enter the chat and just give me some quick answers. That'll help guide the conversation. I hope that this gives you some value, gives you a few things to think about, and guides your team to get better sales results. Our last webinar was about creating a strategic plan. Our next webinar is going to be about driving organic growth and strategic prospecting. What does prospecting need to look like today? My name is Mark Roberts. I use my middle name because the world's most famous streaker is named Mark Roberts. It also makes my mom real happy, but I've written quite a few books. The book Driving Explosive Growth actually has an entire chapter on what I call human to human selling, which is what I hear customers want, need, and require. What they don't want is what I call pitch slapping, where salespeople just assume that people have a problem. As soon as they get a live voice, they start pitching, or they invite people to a discovery call and start doing a demo. That's not what customers are asking for today. And we'll be sharing what customers are asking for here in a couple slides. After writing that book, people reached out and said, "Hey, this whole voice of customer thing sounds pretty important in your process. Tell me more about it." So I wrote a book on that. And like the image shares, what voice of customer is all about is let's get under the surface. Um, Above the surface is what customers tell us, tell our customers, tell our competitors, but let's interview them. Let's really intimately understand their businesses, challenges, or do they plan to grow? What percent of wallet do we have? All that information is very useful as we develop our strategies for growth in the future. So today, what we're going to discuss first is what are some symptoms? What are some symptoms that we might have some sales skills gaps? I've been doing this just short of 40 years. I don't want to say I've seen it all because when I say that, I've often found something new, but I'm going to share some symptoms, common symptoms that I've seen that indicate that your team has some sales skills gaps we need to close. As I indicated, we're going to talk about what are decision makers wanting and needing today. Any given week, we're interviewing hundreds of customers for our clients. We did a project recently that was 419 customers that we interviewed. It took about 6 weeks. But I have the pleasure of seeing all the data. I have the pleasure of seeing common threads that no matter what industry we're serving, buyers and decision makers are saying the same thing. And I'm going to share some of those with you today. How do we improve sales effectiveness? Effectiveness is about the outcome. And one of the ways we do that is with training, coaching, and specifically how we even design that training has a critical impact on whether or not we see an ROI. What made me pick this topic this month, every month we do a webinar, and you can go to my YouTube channel and see recordings of past webinars. Um, I keep having this conversation, whether it's a manufacturer, which is where I spend a lot of time, whether it's one of their distributors. I often train the distributors for my manufacturers. But I talk to a leader and they say something to the tune of, What's always worked for years to grow our companies, not driving the growth, the revenue and profit growth we expected. So what's going on? It worked for my grandfather. It worked for my father. Quite a few of the manufacturers I work with are second, third, fourth generations. What changed? Well, what we're seeing is there's a lot of changes. There's been a lot of changes simply since the pandemic. How people buy, how they were forced to adjust, a lot of different changes. We see a new generation of decision makers coming up through the workforce, and their behaviors are different than, let's say, baby boomers like me. So, market leading companies need to adapt. I call it no smoke and mirrors. My coach, who I've had for 30 years ago, long time ago, recommended I brand what I do. No smoke and mirrors is all about, it's not that complicated. Use the best of the best. I've been to so many seminars, so many trainings, read so many books. I continue to love to read new thought leadership every month. Um, but let's boil it down to what works. You shouldn't need to be an MIT professor to understand how to grow your business. So no smoke and mirrors is my brand. It's basic, simple steps. I outline it in the book on how to profitably grow your business. And I even share stories like, one company, it was a plastics manufacturer. They went from 400 million, we sold them for 300 million. An automotive company, 14 million, we sold them for 90 million. If you follow the steps, and that's what my book is for, it'll help you profitably grow your business. So with that said, what does that process look like? I call it running an MRI on your business. Today, we're focused on training, sales effectiveness. But when we typically engage with somebody, um, we want a lot of data. We want to understand the current state. So we might assess the leadership team. Is everybody aligned and on the same page? You'd be surprised how often we find one or two members of the leadership team are not aligned with the growth plan. We might audit your website. We call it a digital footprint audit. Is the website performing like it should? How does it compare to your top two competitors? How's your rank? And what keywords and phrases might you add to get more traffic to your site? We look at your data, transaction data. We look at your net profit by customer, net profit by product, net profit by salesperson. That all gives us actionable insights. And today, we're going to be talking about we assess your sales team. Do they have the skills to execute what you're asking them to do? Do they have a sales process? Do they have an understanding of your value proposition? What used to take me 10 to 18 months of traveling with a sales team, doing what I would refer to as four-legged sales calls, where I would go out and I would work with whatever company I was serving. I would go out, I'd work with their salespeople, I'd attend meetings, I'd work with the sales managers, and through observation determine what the team needs. Today we can answer that within 7 business days, and we'll show you how later on. So, what's your sales growth? Maybe put it into the chat. What's your sales growth target for 2025? Is your team trying to grow 5%, 10%, 15%, greater than 15%? I'm just curious. I'd like to understand what some of your goals are. I see one person saying 15%. Excellent. Um, Again, no smoke and mirrors, not very fancy, just works. I was always taught that if you're not growing at least 15%, you're actually declining. You're declining because of customer churn. You're declining because of raw material increases. I'm glad to see that nobody is saying like 5%. Again, if you're like one of the clients I just served is inflation. Thanks, Keith. Yeah, inflation erodes our performance. One of the teams I just served is in the billions, and their goal is 7% growth, but that's a pretty big number when you consider that they're a $7 billion company. So I'm just curious for people on the call today, but it sounds like the vast majority want to go at least 15%, if not more. In my book, I love helping companies that want to grow 20, 30% year over year. Um, The question that I have, and it actually came out of a speaking engagement. I do a lot of speaking at events, conferences, sales kickoff meetings, and there was an event in Denver for CEOs, CFOs, and their chief revenue officers. It's a really great event. I was really honored to be asked to participate. And when I was on the stage, I first asked, I love to ask questions, as you can tell. Um, how many of you have a business plan? And of course, everybody raised their hand. And I said, okay, how many of your business plans are Excel documents where it says last year we did 80 million, the next year we're going to do 85 million? Their hands stayed up. How many of your plans actually tell your team how you plan to achieve those goals? Quite a few hands went down. So then I asked the question, what percent of your team actually has the skills to execute the plan? Is it 100%, 70%, 50%, less than 50%? So I'm curious in the chat, in your team, and again, we're not going to know what company you're from. What do you think? Does 100% of your team have the skills? I see one person saying 70. That's a good number. That would be a great number. I see somebody saying 100%. That's phenomenal. The trouble is when I hear people say 100%, and then when I run the assessment, we typically find it's about 30. I see one person saying 50%. So what gives me pause, another person saying 50%. What gives me pause is for me to really help people, I have to mentally um, act like I work on your team, like I'm a team member. Maybe I'm a shareholder. So what gives me pause is if you're telling me you're going to grow 15%, 20%, um, it's not unusual for some of my clients saying, I want to grow 25%, but you're telling me that 50% or less of your team have the skills to do it. It kind of feels like it's going to be a difficult year. It kind of feels like we're going to have to do some things pretty quick to ensure that we can still hit our plan. So what does the data show? Most salespeople are trained in product features, benefits, and applications if they receive training at all. At a bare minimum, salespeople are trained in how to enter an order, how to use your systems. They have compliance training that they have to sign off on. Maybe if you have a CRM, they've been trained in the CRM. Some people have been trained in features, benefits, product. As I said, quite a few of the people that I work with are distributors, and often manufacturers come in and they do these lunch and learns with donuts and breakfast burritos and in an effort to build knowledge about product. But very rarely does anybody come in and actually do sales skills training. Many are trained in systems and processes, but what the data shows is under 50% of sales teams have been trained in sales skills. You know, skills like discovery, qualifying. I call it having conversations that lead to revenue, negotiating, how to build a business case, how to handle objections. Notice I said handle, not overcome. Um, those are skills. How to close. Oh my goodness, we're going to talk about closing skills here towards the end. Um, but those are all skills. We can improve sales effectiveness just by training our people on sales skills so that when they have product conversations and application challenges that customers bring them, they can shorten the sales cycle and increase their close rates. So, what does the data show? What do you think? I'm not asking what your company did, but what do you think in terms of sales goal achievement for 2024? What percent of sales teams achieve their goals? Again, you can tell, my kids are grown and out of the house. I have a lot of time to download and read a lot of studies. What would you say? Is it 100%? 100% of teams out there went out and hit their goals. That would be a bunch of really happy shareholders. Um, I see one person saying, I'm a solopreneur, I'm a consultant, but I learn things every day. Let's say 85%. 70%, 50%. What else do we say? 50%. Yeah. Actually, what the data shows is it's under 50%. and it's been declining since 2016. I pulled some data off of a website. It was like insidesales.com. There's also a very large CRM supplier that everybody knows that does yearly reports. And what the data is saying is under 50% of teams are hitting their goals. So what's going on? Maybe we need to adapt. Maybe we need to do some sales skills training. Maybe we need to better understand our customers so that the way we present and the language that we use better meets their needs and resonates with them. So what are some symptoms of people needing sales training? I'll ask you guys first. What are some symptoms that you've seen that somebody needs to be trained in sales? They use the word I. Absolutely. Um, Customers don't care. Lack of pipeline, yes. I just wrote an article for those people struggling in Q1. I can't believe we're about to, we've got what, 30 days and Q1 is over? And I wrote an article to help people that are having what I call a cold snap at the first quarter. Low conversion rate, Mike. Yes, absolutely. Um, these are things that we should be looking for. And as leaders in our companies, um, seek out ways to turn those statistics around. So let me just share some that I look for when I'm talking to a sales leader or a business owner. Large number of quotes, but poor close rate. Um, I had a client in the building and supply industry that, as I got to know them, I mean, the amount of quotes that they were doing, but their close rate was like under 20%. So this is an indication to me that what I would call is they're too quick to quote. They're not asking any questions. It's more of a transaction than it is a sale. The sad news for those kind of salespeople is AI will be doing that for you in very short order if it's not doing it already. Hi, I'd like somebody to please mute their phone. Um, Selling on price and availability, not value. Again, this is more of a transactional thing. And the sad reality is we're seeing more of this since the pandemic than ever before. If we're honest with ourselves, if you had a really good year during and after the pandemic, it's because you had inventory. It's because you could supply. You didn't have to be all that good at sales. When so many people were challenged with supply chain constraints and people that you've always wanted to sell couldn't get what they needed, so they called you. You didn't have to be all that good. And the trouble is, we saw a lot of sales skills like muscle memory atrophy. And we're trying to get sales teams back on some of those key skills. Low to no new customer acquisition. It's the last thing most salespeople do during their day. They always have reasons. They're super busy and they're very busy, but are they busy in the things we're asking them to do? Are they even skilled at prospecting? Prospecting today is a lot different than it was when I went up through sales training. Low customer satisfaction and net promoter score. Quite a big part of our business's revenue is doing voice of customer research, and we interview customers. Um, First, we develop the questions with our clients. We always want to know customer satisfaction, net promoter score, but we also want to know those things that you've always wanted to know, and it kind of drives you crazy on your drive home at night. And then miss new product ROI. Um, if your company's invested in a new product, anything you do is an investment. So we should expect a return. Maybe your product managers, your marketing leaders, went out into the market and discovered an unresolved market problem. They did their work, they created a business case, they sold it to your leaders to get investment for new tooling, new presses, whatever. But the team consistently misses the ROI target. Why? What's going on? Could it be that maybe the product wasn't right? Maybe. Could it be that we didn't have the right tools and the right messaging? Maybe. But more often than not, the salespeople didn't have the skills to execute. High frequency of discounting. This is when we work with, I use some data analysts out of Texas A&M, PhDs, and they look at your ERP data. And we get all kinds of insights, like what's the frequency of discounting? How many orders are actually placed at your listed prices? What's happening with gross margins? So your revenue is increasing, but if your gross margins are decreasing, that's a symptom that your salespeople are not selling based on value. I look at CRMs. Do you only have one contact per customer? In our class, our training on business relationships, we teach them to create what we call a relationship matrix. Today, depending upon how many zeros are in your purchase order, there could be anywhere from 3 to 10 people involved in the buying decision. And shame on us if our salespeople don't know how to identify them and build relationships with them. CRMs, don't get me started. Even large companies struggle with their salespeople not using the CRM. They're not using it properly. They're using it as a data archive. And don't even get me started with the accuracy of the data. I was trying to help another client in the food industry. Their CEO was very proud that he has 1,800 customers in his database. Um, to make our calls, we downloaded that information. Over 70% of the contact information in his database was wrong. So we have to have accuracy, and the burden of keeping that updated is on sales, on customer service as well. No social selling skills. Um, Maybe some of you came to this because of a LinkedIn invite. Hopefully, it didn't feel all that salesy, but every day I have somebody reach out and they say, "Hey, I'd like to connect," and then they give me like 4 paragraphs on why, and they start pitching me. Um, they don't understand social selling. They don't understand how to use the assets that marketing has developed or when to use them. No business acumen. What we keep hearing is buyers today, decision makers want to hear about outcomes and impacts, not features and benefits. So we need to speak the language of business. What are your customers talking about when you're not there? They're talking about increasing net income, improving cash flow, diversifying their account portfolio, improving shareholder value, but salespeople are just speaking a different language. So we teach them business acumen and then how to connect the dots between what they sell and the impacts that they have. Too quick to quote, we mentioned that. And then customer churn. Often, even large A customers. Um, One of the rules that we have when we interview customers is if we hear somebody that's really unhappy, we let you know within hours, if not 24 hours. And in one instance, we were helping a pretty large company that makes industrial machines, and their third largest customer was getting ready to leave. They didn't even know. When we looked in the CRM, the salesperson put in a note, something like they're moving in a new direction and won't be requiring our services. No, they're moving in a new direction because of a terrible experience that they had. So, to the credit of that CEO, he got on an airplane with some other executives. They spent a day there. They understand what the customer wants and they turn it around. So, what percentage of decision makers today do you think are not working with salespeople? You're 75%. Wow. 30%, 50%. Yeah, it's a big number. And unfortunately, it's growing. 75%. Wow. And I often find when I ask that question, people quickly internalize it. They talk about their decision. I choose to buy a car online now because I hate the whole car buying experience. Um, I choose to go to a website and 2 clicks buy something because I don't want to be sold. I want to be served. But what the data shows is it's growing. It's growing as we have a new demographic moving into decision-making roles, but it's also growing because salespeople have been behaving badly for so long. I call it pitch slapping, where they just jump in and assume that you have problems. They don't get to know you. They don't understand your business. They don't understand your challenges and constraints. It's like they're working the numbers. I need to make 100 calls this week, and you're number 54. Um, Buyers can feel that. There's an author named Larry Levine that I follow. He's actually become a good friend, and he calls it commission breath. Customers can smell commission breath a mile away. So they're just choosing not to work with salespeople. The number, by the way, in the recent research is 30%, and they expect it to grow to 40% within the next 2 years. So we've talked about the challenges. What do we need to do? Well, I can tell you what I keep hearing, and you can choose what you do. What buyers and decision makers are telling us over and over again is they want authentic human to human conversations. They want to talk to somebody that they can trust and somebody that demonstrates competence. In our training, we actually have two courses on asking great questions. And I share that by the nature of your question, you can demonstrate competence and build trust. But if you're going to give me a softball question like, hey, what keeps you up at night? Yeah, very quickly, I'm going to dismiss you and it's done. But you ask me a question where very quickly you're getting me to think. I can tell that you're in our industry. I can tell that possibly you're serving others in our industry. I'm going to want to talk to you. They want market industry consultants masquerading as salespeople. What they don't want is somebody coming in trying these sales gimmicks and techniques. I call it sales porn. I wrote an article on sales porn. Are your salespeople addicted to sales porn? There's a lot of people out there, in jets and lighting cigars with $100 bills and crazy things. I don't want salespeople acting like that. I don't want people listening to those people. It's about human to human interaction and helping each other. They want value in every conversation. It was interesting. During the pandemic, we were hired by a very large distributor in the HVAC industry. And the CEO's concern was now that we're not having face to face conversations, um, is it hurting our customer relationships? 60% said virtual selling improved the relationship. So we had to dig deeper. And what we kept hearing was, I never said anything because I really like your rep, but it's kind of a pretty big disturbance when they just show up, they hang out in my lobby, they talk to me for an hour, maybe they go into customer service, maybe they go into my warehouse. I like virtual. Virtual, we get what we want, we get it as fast as we need it, and we can move on, we can go about our day. Um, and then they want to talk about impacts, outcomes, how what you're selling is going to impact their bottom line. So the whole mission today was to get you ready for why we want to improve sales effectiveness and how do we do it. Um, what I'm going to share is a process that I've learned. I'm going to share a process that I've adapted a little bit based on some research, but it consistently drives the outcomes that people want. At the very end, when you get the slides, there'll actually be a comment from one of the CEOs whose industry was down 18% last year, but following this process, they actually grew. Um, so the process, number one, assess, don't assume. Don't assume anything. We really can't trust our gut and intuition anymore. Um, I find your intuition and industry experience valuable, but I want to validate it. Is it still true? Often we find that, value propositions and messaging that we used to use, let's say for decision-making personas, are not resonating anymore. Um, we need to adjust. And then the actual design of how you do training matters. And then we prescribe. We don't throw the whole kitchen sink at you, unless, of course, often I help engineers who have entered a sales role or a technician that moved into sales. Well, then they need the foundational training. But the best results I've seen is first we assess what they need and we deliver what they need. The quickest way to lose engagement in a training is give people something that they already know. You'll see them literally drift off. They'll stop attending. They'll start using their cell phone. I got a really important customer call and they leave the session for 2 hours. Um, and then we apply, practice, measure, and then coach. If you really want to invest in something that's going to improve your sales results, invest in training your managers how to coach. So let's unpack each one. When we assess, the number one thing that still is the best is observation. Now, I want to be cautious. I don't want you to look at their sales numbers and then decide who needs training based on their numbers. It wasn't too long ago, I'll change the person's name, but a CEO said, look, I want you to come in here, train my team, and I need more Jasons. Look at what Jason's doing. Jason is crushing it every month. He blows past his sales goals. He blows past his profit goals. Look at his new product placement. Look at our share of wallet. Well, actually, when we assessed Jason's skills, he wasn't the top performer on the team. He just had a great market. As we looked at his market, he didn't open any of the accounts that he's managing today. Now he's doing a great job, but don't assume just the data, the sales data, the profit data is a good indicator of sales skills. I recommend a formal sales skills assessment. I've used assessments for years. It really quickly gives me a snapshot. And in those assessments, don't just look at skills, but also we want to unpack beliefs. Often we find limiting beliefs. Our customers don't want people cold calling them. That was one of my favorite ones, right? Now, if you cold call wrong, then you're probably right. But the same customer where the salespeople believe that, over 80% of their team believed that, when we interviewed their customers and asked, how did you come to work with this particular company? Over 70% said somebody from their organization reached out to me. What other limiting beliefs? If I send them a quote, they'll buy when they're ready. That's a limiting belief. That's a sales team that believes a quote is closing. Motivation. Are they motivated? We helped a team recently because sometimes we work with teams that have branches, whether it's distributors, manufacturer locations, and this was a particularly underperforming location. And what we found was the person had some skills that was leading the branch, but he wasn't motivated. He actually hated the job of branch manager. So what we ended up doing is looking at the data, talking to the leaders, talking to the individual, and we actually moved them back into a role where they're crushing it as far as key account sales. Outlook, they have to have a positive outlook. That burden is on us. We don't want to just throw a goal over the fence, right? Uh, we need to have them help collaborate in building the plan on how to grow. And then commitment. Are they committed? Another way to ask is, are they engaged? We're going to talk later on. I mean, engagement is at an all-time low right now. I want to say the numbers are 60% of employees are not engaged, 14% are actually disengaged. They're doing just the bare minimum to survive, and they're actually looking for other opportunities. Design. This is actually an area that I really enjoyed learning about. I was the training leader for a very large manufacturer, and they actually sent me to Harvard to learn how to train adults. We have knowledge transfer. Basically, we teach you something that you didn't know before. We can do that with a video. We can do that, have you read an article. We can do, a recorded short, PowerPoint, or we can do it live. And then we want to space the learning. I don't know about you, but have you ever attended a sales training and it was one day? What the data shows, what the research shows, is if your people have a sales training for a day, 2 days, 3 days, and don't act on it, they're going to forget 90%. 90% of what they were taught, they're going to forget in 48 hours, and they're going to go back to doing what they've always done. So you're not going to get an ROI for that investment in that training. Stacked. What we refer to here is, we start with the fundamentals and then we grow. So as we teach another topic, we might build on an earlier topic, blended. The shame is our minds actually go to sleep after 90 minutes. That's why this webinar is not going to be 90 minutes. Actually, my goal is that we end early to give you more time in your day. So what we want to do is to prevent that is we might do a training on prospecting skills. Then we might do an introduction to CRM and teach salespeople why a CRM helps them. Then we might go into a particular product. Then we might do a market training. We might do a compliance training. We might do a training on building your relationship matrix inside our company, then go back to another product. So I think you get the idea. We blend the training. That way, people are engaged. Learning checks. Whether you have an LMS or you don't, we need to make sure we have learning checks throughout this journey. It can be a formal quiz in your learning management system. One of my clients, you have to pass before you can continue the training. And if you don't pass 3 times, It actually notifies your manager. And the two of you need to create a learning plan to help get you up to speed and catch up with the rest of the class. Application exercises. Every one of the trainings that I deliver has an application exercise. Salespeople hate it, but it's one of the best things they can do. Um, Take what you just learned, but apply it to your role, apply it to your industry, add industry terms, and then practice. Practice, practice, practice. It's actually, when I engage with companies that want to be trained, it's sometimes one of the most favorite things. I mean, we do virtual training just because it's easy to get on people's schedules that way. We don't take people out of their market. But when we do the practice session, we refresh whatever skill it was that we taught you virtually or what we had you watch a video on, but then we have you do it. And while you're doing it, sales managers and me and others are walking around coaching and helping you. Prescribe. A lot of times clients record the virtual modules and then they keep them in their LMS. And then if somebody's like, let's say, struggling with closing skills, even after they've taken the course, because they didn't apply it, their manager can prescribe them to watch it again. Um, Live virtual sessions, kind of like this. We give a little bit of information, we ask a few questions. We give a little bit of information, we facilitate some of your top performers sharing what they do on each topic. Quizzes, there's a lot of different ways we can do quizzes throughout, and then support materials. I'm a big fan of books, as you can see behind me. When I was a VP of sales, I traveled 4 nights a week and I read a book a week. And ever since then, I just can't stop. But articles, videos, books, um, but it has to align with what you're training and reinforce what you're training. Apply. If they don't apply, like I said, they're going to forget. So we have interactive sessions. Within 24 hours, we give them an assignment. Call 3 of the quotes that you've done and use the closing skills we've indicated and report your success to your manager. And then the manager follows up. Um, Take what we just did as far as some of these discovery questions, but use your industry language and terminology and make them your own. Don't sound like a script. I don't know about you, but if somebody calls me and it sounds like they're reading a script, very quickly, I hit the red button on my phone. Customize your real life scenarios. So as a trainer, I can teach skills, but where the rubber really meets the road is when we use real life scenarios that they deal with every day. That's where we actually ask them during the training, you know, before we get into objection handling, tell me the top 5 objections. I work with the sales manager, the sales leader, maybe even the CEO. What are some objections that either your team has been hearing or you expect them to hear? And we take the methodology, but apply it to your industry, to your company. I'm not a big fan of off the shelf training. The training industry is a $17 billion business and growing. The challenge, though, is, and when people call me, their biggest concern is, am I going to get a return on this investment? I sent my team to negotiating training, is what one client just said, but I don't see them doing it. Well, yeah, you sent them to a day's training, which is awesome, but what did you do to apply it? And then we want to make sure that as we train, it aligns with daily sales motions. If your industry doesn't require something, then why are we, putting that into the training? One of my criticisms of some CRM systems is why is there so much there that our team's not using? So again, we just want to align the training and then practice. Make the content your own in language, your own industry language, not scripts. Role play, role play, role play. Um, I just finished a training for one of my clients, and we did a new role play about every 90 minutes. And we created scenarios. We refreshed what we learned, months ago in a virtual training, and then we had them practice. Manager-led scenarios is also very popular. I have another client doing that right now. I actually created some scenarios that their sales managers and branch managers can use at the end of their weekly meeting. They do like what we would call a flash drill. They call on a salesperson and say, hey, Here's the scenario. What would you say? After you've done that a couple times, salespeople are going to go back and revisit the training so that they don't feel uncomfortable during a flash drill. Watch the videos again. I'm a big fan of recording training. When I was trained at Frito-Lay, they actually recorded us when we were making pitches in a fictitious grocery store. And then, we would spend time almost like football films. Right there. Did you hear what he just said? That was your opportunity to. So again, videos are important, and then AI scenarios are starting to happen. A couple of my clients, large clients, are actually incorporating AI. So we can feed the AI the scenario, the AI creates the scenario, and an avatar actually talks to your employee, and we can see a recording of the entire exchange. And then measure. We shouldn't do anything without expecting an ROI. A lot of people track what I call lagging indicators, sales, profits, what happened. Let's start tracking leading indicators. If we have them out prospecting, one of my clients, has a desire to grow 22%. And what we did in the voice of customer research determined that less than 20% of their customers believe they're going to grow. Well, then they need to go out and open new business. So let's track the behaviors that support that strategy. Um, I'm a big fan of weekly, monthly, quarterly. I have some clients, depending upon what you sell, they monitor behaviors daily. Um, and we report on the team success, but also each individual success. Now, some people might say, whoa, 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 you're going to make some people uncomfortable. In sales, typically people in sales are highly competitive. So if we're tracking your close rate, and your close rate, let's say, is 45%, but you've got two people that are consistently coming in at 20, 30%, one, they're going to be motivated to keep up with the rest of the team. But second, very quickly, it's almost like a branch manager, sales manager dashboard. Very quickly, you're going to know who needs help. And we're going to help them. Maybe you're going to shadow them on sales calls. Maybe you're going to prescribe training. Maybe you're going to have them read an article on that particular challenge that they have. But I'm a big fan of measuring it and then coaching. Less than 50% of salespeople have been trained, and the numbers are even worse for sales managers. It happened to me. I've been the top performing salesperson at a couple of companies when I was younger, and they're like, congratulations, you're now the sales manager. And the assumption is through osmosis, I'm going to have all the people that now report to me act like me. Well, that doesn't happen without training. And we need to train managers on how to coach. If you have a micromanager, maybe somebody that was a top performing salesperson, but now they're micromanaging their salespeople, you're going to lose some of your top performers, and you're going to burn out that person. So we need to train them, give them actionable data and teach them how to use it, how to use the CRM for coaching, how to coach deals through the pipeline. If a deal, let's say, is stuck after a quote and the customer is ghosting the salesperson, what digital assets do you have? What have you learned over the years to get the sale moving again? And then provide individual learning and training paths. And again, that's why I recommend that we record as much as we can. We create sales playbooks from the data that we gather. So the challenge is it's all about talent improvement. If we improve the talent of our team, we're going to have better and higher sales success. So I left you with some questions like, do you have the right people and the right structure for growth today? Um, when we interview your customers, we can quickly find out. I see quite a few people now investing in an inside sales model that's going to handle, let's say, B, C, D customers. And the structure is, their salespeople, those sales assets that are trained, are going to spend time on A customers, but also about 30% of their time on net new business. Does your team have the skills to execute? Are there any open roles? Interesting, the first of the year, typically people call me saying, hey, Mark, I need to hire X amount of people. And I sell assessments. So it's like, okay, here's a pre-hire assessment instrument. Let's get everybody that applies to take it. But before you start adding overhead, are you sure you need more people? Or do we just need to improve the effectiveness of your current team? Um, the Pareto numbers, I mean, typically 20, 30% of your sales team is carrying about 80% of your net income. What if we change that? What if we got like 60% of your team, carrying the numbers? Typically, particularly with a large customer with a lot of salespeople, we'll find about 20% of the team shouldn't even be in sales. So before you add more people, what do you say we put those 20% into other roles where they can add a tremendous amount of value and we replace them with skilled salespeople? Is your sales senior leadership team aligned? Often, when we assess, we look at sales managers, we also look at sales leaders, and the actual strategy to grow isn't understood. So if we discover that, then we quickly solve that. And then succession plans. As I said, a large percentage of people are exiting, and sometimes it's your top performers. One of my distributors from last year, we ran the data. We actually did some, instead of voice of customer research, we actually did some engagement research. And we found that over 50% of their top performers had planned to retire in the next 3 years. So what are we doing to prepare for that? What are we doing to train the next generation? What kind of tools and assets? How are we gathering insights that is not anywhere on our website or in any of our sales material? It's tribal knowledge in the minds of those people. You don't have to guess. So here's an example of an assessment. This was a smaller team. I want to say it was like 18 people. But as you can see, they're in the 60th percentile in skills. They understand product. That's the big rise that you see there. But look at closing skills. They scored 21 out of 100. So even if with the best marketing in the world, the best messaging in the world, if your team doesn't know how to ask for the order or has a limiting belief that they shouldn't ask for the order because they're being a pushy salesperson, you're not going to be seeing a return. We also assess managers, and I call it shadow of the leader. I want to see where the manager's strong. And this, it looks like an eye chart, but in this particular graph, this leadership team was about 9 sales branch managers, really understood value selling, but they didn't understand hunting, and they definitely didn't understand closing. So when I see this, typically your team will follow the skills that you have. And sure enough, when we assessed the team, that's what we found. Another team, look at this one. Talk about a bunch of hunters, right? 80th percentile in hunting skills. But it's kind of like that dog chasing the car, and then all of a sudden the car stops. It's like, what do I do now? They don't have consultative selling skills, selling value, qualifying, and they definitely don't understand how to close. So now that we understand the data, we can prescribe. Often when we do voice of customer research, leaders want to know, like, what's the experience by salesperson? And this is actually a slide that we gathered where we asked that question. And the good news is quite a few of the salespeople are doing really well, 100% satisfaction. But very quickly, like sales agent number 8 and 14, we need to do some work there. Because red indicates not only are they like indifferent, but they're not happy. And the nice thing is when we do that research, the clients actually get an Excel spreadsheet of every interview and every question that we asked. So very quickly, we can identify the salespeople that need to be coached and in what particular area are they struggling. Again, we want to improve sales effectiveness. Um, Recommend that you assess, understand the current state, design it based on the most effective, the science of learning. We prescribe what people need. We apply it. We force practice. Salespeople are going to try to get out of role playing every day. But if we make it fun, we make it safe in the environment, we measure and we coach. Um, I experimented with something new, and now I'm going to use it every time I teach prospecting. We taught the prospecting course. It was a stack design. We kept giving them more skills, a prospecting cadence. But when we did the live training, we refreshed, and then the owner gave everybody 20 to 40 customers that they've always wanted to sell, and they had a prospect for 90 minutes. Um, it blew the CEO away. Some of the conversations that they had, future meetings that were booked. I remember one person in the audience said, "Hey, I'm really sorry. I only made one call, but I was on the call for 60 minutes. I'm meeting with them next Tuesday." So practice, measure what matters, and then coach. So the question is, kind of eating my own dog food here. What are you going to do? We just went over what the data says. We just went over what the science of learning says. What are you going to do? What's your action plan? Are you going to assess your sales team? Are you going to go out and interview your customers? If you can't afford a third party to do that, that's what my book is for. It teaches you how to do it. Um, what are you going to do? Because if you don't do something based on our time together today, you're not going to get a return on your time. By the way, time is the biggest asset that we all have today. If you're interested, there's a very interesting article from Harvard called Decision Fatigue and how we're being forced to make more decisions, more interactions than we ever have. So I want you to benefit from our time together today. I also have a free effectiveness assessment. I just took some common questions that I ask leaders and CEOs and business owners to help me diagnose maybe areas that they need to improve, and it's free. There's no gimmick. Literally, you're downloading a PDF, you're printing it, and you're going to self-assess. I don't see what your results are, but the assessment will actually coach you on, okay, based on the number that the assessment came up at, here's some things you might want to look at. Questions? Are there any questions? We got about 8 more minutes, but again, my goal was to end before the time. The forgetting curve. Yeah, Bob, I agree. We don't want to train to the forgetting curve. We want to train to the learning curve. Don't call it role playing. Okay, I agree with that. Often when I engage, I actually talk about scenarios. And with the help of sales leaders and actually the salespeople, we create real life scenarios and have them practice. One team we just trained for negotiating skills actually had their purchasing leaders in the room. So we got to actually practice with other purchasing leaders, our negotiating skills. We call it batting practice. Yeah. I was a martial arts instructor back before I started my work career. I had an accident that prevented me from actually continuing down that path, but it's been 20 years since I trained, but I promise you, if I throw a side block right now, it's going to be perfect. And the reason it's going to be perfect is because I did it thousands of times. So we need to create that sales muscle memory in our teams now so that it comes out when they need it. All right. Well, as we wrap up, I think I have a couple. That's the testimonial from a recent client. Oh, Bruce Lee, 10,000 kicks come to mind. Absolutely. Love old Bruce Lee movies. Um, but there's a testimonial from the client. CEO said, look, my industry's down and my team grew. And he actually, went in detail about what he liked about my training, how he liked that we assessed them, how he liked that we did in-person workshops and made the team. This particular team, we actually spent an hour doing follow-up. To the CEO's credit, he gave us a list of all the quotes, and it was thousands and thousands of dollars got closed in less than an hour. If you want to learn more, I mean, obviously I've got a book, I've got a website, no smoke and mirrors. Quickest way to find me is Google Fix Sales Problems. My website ranks #1 in the world. I have a blog, but I really want to connect. I try to put something useful out on LinkedIn in my blog at least once, twice per week to help people. I also wrote a book, ebook that's free. You can download it. It's 17 ways to help salespeople be motivated and engaged. Again, I'm giving all that just to help people that attended today or the people that couldn't attend live but are listening to this recording. And as always, if you're struggling with anything in here and you just want to chat, um, I have 30-minute conversations with people all the time. So thank you for attending. And as I said, you're going to get a PDF, you're going to get a recording of the video, and chances are you're going to get invited. Next month, the subject is organic growth and strategic prospecting. So thanks, everybody, and I look forward to hearing from people.